So, welcome everyone. Thank you for your patience. And for those of you who may not know me, I'm Cheryl Benton. I'm the founder and publisher of the Three Tomatoes. And we are absolutely delighted to have all of you here joining us tonight. And for some of you who may be new to the Three Tomatoes, let me just give you like a quick little overview. The Three Tomatoes is a lifestyle guide for grown-up women and grown-up women who refuse to be defined by someone else's definition of age. And we really started the Three Tomatoes because we wanted to really celebrate each other and celebrate every age and every stage of our lives, and to really make that a celebration and cause to be happy and not to feel invisible or feel marginalized. We have a very robust website that covers all the topics that we're interested in. And we welcome tomatoes. And tomatoes, you're all here. You're smart, savvy, really awesome, smart women. And I am so happy to have all the tomatoes here tonight. So I am so excited. She's been very patient here because we have our incredible host. We have Joan Lunden, and she is one classy hot tomato. So Joan, welcome.
Thank you for asking me. This is great.
Joan, listen, we all feel like we know you because you came into our
Because I'm putting on
homes.
my lip gloss.
You came into our homes every morning for 20 years on Good Morning America. And by the way, here's a fact that I didn't really realize. You are the longest running female host ever on early morning TV. That's an amazing accomplishment. But here are a few things that you may not know about Joan. First of all, I know you are host now of a brand new PBS TV series called Second Opinion with Joan Lunden. And actually, I watched one of the episodes this week. It was on the vaccines. It was excellent. You also host the Washington Post podcast series called Caring for Tomorrow. It's on the future of healthcare. So really, health and wellness has really become such an important mission, and you're delivering such great information on this for all of us. And here's a couple of other things that you may or may not know about Joan. She's the mother of 7 children, including 2 sets of twins who happen to be teenagers now. So I don't know if having teenagers keeps you young or ages you. I think it's a little bit about both, right?
I think it keeps you young.
Good.
Absolutely.
I was just saying, I have 3 teenage grandchildren, so I can't imagine at my age dealing with 2 sets of twins, but that's really terrific. So, and in addition to that, you're an award-winning journalist, a motivational speaker, and a best-selling author. And tonight we are going to be talking about your 12th book, which actually has the best title ever. It's called Why Did I Come Into This Room? A Candid Conversation About Aging. And for those of you who have already read the book, you know how candid Joan is. It's one of the things I really love about the book. And we are going to have a very candid conversation tonight too. So Joan, I love your story about how you came to write this book. I think it came from an interviewer's question.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had been working on a version of this book for years. I think it used to be called Live Younger Longer. And then I thought, it's not about living younger longer. It's about living our best us, as we make our way through the decades. And then I had done, I'm a special correspondent for today's show, which basically means if I have something really good, I call them, or they call me every now and then. Doesn't mean getting up every morning, which is good. And I had done this series on friendships and the bond that a friendship has, and how it can help your immune system and help you manage stress. And I was so excited to talk about it. They scheduled for me a number of different interviews to promote the series. And so I made the call at the appropriate time to the Hollywood Reporter to do this interview. And this guy, his first question to me was, well, Miss Lunden, what's it going to be like going back to early morning television as a senior citizen? I almost fell off my chair. I mean, technically, Yeah, I am. I don't know. I just had never really been, I'd never been called a senior citizen. I didn't really think of myself as that. My age speaks to it. But afterwards I thought that guy Googled me and saw my age, because it wasn't on the press release that came from NBC, saw
Right.
my age. And what did that make him think? That I wasn't relevant anymore? I maybe was too old to be going on morning television. I, so it was such an obvious um, incident of ageism, and how we in this Western world are so married to age, that number that we are. And it really can, I think, be very limiting, because all of a sudden you say, I'm 64. Well, I'm too old to do that. Or, I mean, I'll admit every now and then I'll put on a dress or skirt and I'll say, is this skirt too short for my age? I hate that phrase,
I
for my
know.
age. But I do it now and then. So there's two things. There's how people look at us and think of us as kind of, past our prime, over the hill, uh, senior citizen, whatever they want to call us. But there's also how we think about ourselves. And that is equally as important, in my opinion. And, I hear a lot of women say, well, I can't do those kinds of things anymore because, I'm in my 60s or whatever. Well, yes, you can. I mean, life is very different today. When my mom's world, if you got into your 60s, retire, put your feet up and expect to be, 6 feet under by 70, maybe 75. But guess what? My mom lived till 95. And she always used to say to me, like, I never expected to still be around. And I don't have any friends, they've died. And she was shocked that she was still around. But in today's world, when you turn 65, you could well have 30 years in front of you. And you need to plan for that. We need to embrace this new age timeline that we are all encountering, so that we stay engaged in life, very much engaged in life through our 60s and into our 70s, because that's really going to determine the quality of our life, the quality of our happiness, and even our health. Because we are expecting to decline, that can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if we expect to still be engaged and taking care of our health and finding interesting things and being open to opportunities, that's going to make us retain our cognitive thinking, stay physically active, and all those things create your quality of life. And always your thoughts kind of, and your expectations create your reality. So that's part of why I really wanted to write a book like this. But I really did aim it at women, all of us. And the reason why is that we experience age very differently from men, because we have estrogen. And when that estrogen starts to go down,
Yeah.
a whole series of things happens to us. And when these aren't like talked about, they shouldn't be taboo subjects. If they aren't talked about so that every woman realizes, oh, wait, I know to expect this. I know what I can do about it. And it's the same that every other woman experiences. Otherwise, if we
Exactly.
experience these things alone, pretty soon you say, is there something wrong with me? Like, are my insides breaking down and I can't go to sleep? I can't lose weight. My stomach, my digestive system doesn't work as well. My waistline just like expanded on cue. And it did, by the way, and we'll talk about that probably. And that's a terrible path to go down alone, because it leaves you saying, I don't know if I'm sexy anymore. I don't know if I'm as appealing. And pretty soon you get to that, am I still relevant? And I think that's a terrible path to go down. So I
It
wanted this
is.
book to be a conversation starter, just like we're doing right now.
Well, it is, Joan, and it's such a wonderful book. You've done such a great job of doing that, and you've definitely brought out all those taboo topics too, which
Oh, yeah.
we don't want them to be taboo anymore. And I just want to say some of the things that I really love about the book. One is your candor and your willingness to share your stories with us, and we'll talk about some of them. You're very brave with some of those stories that you share, but and I love the humor in the book, those moments and experiences about growing older that we can all laugh about, and you have to have a sense of humor. As they say, it's growing old isn't for sissies. The why am I in the room, where did I park the car? I cannot tell you the number of times that I have gone through parking lots trying to find my car. Where are my glasses? And here they
there's
are.
an app for that. There are all kinds of apps now to help us remember. I have a little tile.
Things.
I put this thing in my car, and when I leave my car, when I come out, all I have to do is go to that app, and it like gets me right back to my car.
Oh, I need that. I need that app. So your book gives us a lot to laugh about, but then you also really discuss the serious issues about aging. And the other thing that's so great about your book is you've really done a lot of research and homework for this book about aging. But what I really loved about it is that you presented it in a way, in a non-scientific, researchy way, in a way that we can really understand. And I have to say, we do a lot of health and wellness topics at the Three Tomatoes with some great experts. And, I feel like I know a little bit about some of this stuff, but I learned a lot from your book. And we're going to talk about some of those things. One of them is my 24-ounce glass of water that I've got here right now. I truly wish that drinking wine would hydrate you. Then I'd really be set. But we're going to talk about the water thing, because and I really try to make a
little thing that makes a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. So the other thing I like is how you organize the book, and it's in 3 parts. It's mind, body, and soul. And we're going to kind of go through each sections, and I pulled out some things that I was very fascinated with that I'd love to hear the answers to. So, but I want to start because you said that there are 3 things that predict how you age. So what are those 3 things?
Well, believe it or not, they might not be what you think, but number 1 is staying engaged in life. Isolation, according to the experts, has a negative impact on our body equal to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And, when I first heard that, and it's like you can really put it now in more of a way that you understand the impact that isolation makes on your immune system, your stress, and thus your longevity. So staying engaged in life. Number 2 is social connections. And that doesn't just mean, maybe a daughter that comes over and like helps you out with grocery shopping or whatever. It means friends. It means connections. Why? Well, for one thing, there's a phrase that is joys are doubled and sorrows are halved through with friendship. And so not only do you get up in the morning and say, oh gosh, I can't wait to call Harriet and tell her about blah, blah, blah. It also keeps you in conversation, which means you're using your brain. You're trying to remember things. You're creating new memories. So both of those things really make social connections. And it's never too late. Like, look for ways to make social connections through book clubs, through a church, through a synagogue. And the third thing is sense of purpose. And this does not mean that you have to, volunteer at the hospital. Although I must say, every time I walk into my local hospital here in Greenwich, Connecticut, right off to the left is this little area where all the volunteers are. They're mostly, silver-haired and happy. They're laughing and talking because they have a sense of purpose. And I've talked to them and they say, I bring people out of this hospital after they've had surgery that is, completely corrected something, or with a brand new baby. But a sense of purpose can be something as simple as having a garden that you say, I got to get up today, go out there. I want to weed that garden. I got to plant some more things. I got to, get my tomatoes and things. It can be going into doing something you maybe used to love to do. My husband's Aunt Millie, who's still 103, and when her husband died, she was really depressed. It was almost like paralyzed a little bit by the whole thing. And her daughter remembered that she used to love to paint and do art. So she brought all the supplies in, and before you know it, she was painting up a storm. She was happy. She had a sense of purpose. Every one of us have an Aunt Millie painting in our house. I mean, it can be any number of things that give you a reason to get up in the morning and put your feet on the floor and get dressed and go and tend to whatever that thing is that gives you a sense of purpose.
Yeah. And Joan, everything you just said is even more important now during this pandemic. I mean, we're talking about isolation, socializing, having a purpose, and there are so many ways that people are finding to connect and do that during this really trying time. And good, Zoom is good.
Friend you haven't talked
club. Exactly. Yeah. So that
and
is
thank goodness good. For Zoom.
Yeah, exactly.
I only wish I had stock in the company.
Yes, don't we all?
Who thought that grandmas would be Zooming with their grandkids is crazy.
It's been great. It's been great. So let's start to talk about some of the sections in the book, and we'll start with the mind. And I think if you asked most of us what our biggest fear is about aging, I think most of us would say dementia, because it's, we hear so much about it. And you have some really good research around the brain. So talk to us about the brain.
Well, first of all, experts used to think that not our brain, but the hippocampus, that part of the brain that has all of our memories and our ability to recall and think of things, that they thought started shrinking in our 60s. But now, through science, they learned that it starts shrinking actually at about age 30. And just it shrinks a little bit and a little bit and a little bit with time. But the good news is that there are things that we can do to slow down that cognitive decline. They also used to think that we were all born with a certain amount of neurons in the brain and that was it. And as they started to waste away, that's when the trouble started. They have since learned that neurogenesis, the creation of new neurons, continues all throughout our life. So what we all want is we want to create new neurons. You can do that by challenging your brain, especially learning new things, a new language, all about a new subject, a new instrument, a new hobby. But most of all, exercise, cardiovascular exercise. The neurons that are created when we are exercising are much better adept at connecting to the central system. And these neurons have to connect to the central system in order to slow down cognitive decline. And so if we get that in, and I got to tell you, when I learned this, and all of a sudden going out for my walk jog wasn't just about my, connecting, and buttoning up my jeans, but that it was about my brain and being able to be sharp. Man, I couldn't find my sneakers fast enough. And ever since then, what's the old phrase? You can't unlearn something you've learned. I looked at exercise in a completely different way. There's something that, there's a byproduct that happens when you are learning things. And that's kind of floating around up there in our brain. And at night, when we sleep, that it's almost like a car wash, and it comes through and it washes all that away. Mm-hmm. If you're not getting good sleep, and we are supposed to get 7 to 9 hours. If you're not getting good sleep though, then that doesn't get washed out. And if you've ever wondered after a horrible night's sleep that you wake up and you say, God, I feel hungover and I didn't drink anything, I'm just like foggy. Right. Well, that can be all of that didn't kind of get washed out of your brain. But the good news here is that we don't just have to let cognitive decline happen. There are things that we can do to slow down that process. The other bit of good news is that, a 20-year-old can walk into a room and say, wait, what did I come in here for? And they don't think anything of it. But if you're in your 50s or your 60s, you immediately think that this is the start of something bad. The good news is that it's probably not. It is most likely just age-appropriate forgetfulness, not necessarily the beginning of dementia. That is very different. So, but there's so many things that we can be doing, challenging our brain and reading, be a lifelong learner. And these are things that will help us stay sharp.
Well, throughout your book, and one of the things I think is so important, in every one of the chapters, you talk about how the lifestyle choices we make, how that can really
Yeah,
change how we age. So we do have control in
we really
so
do.
much of this. And that's what's so hopeful and
Yeah.
encouraging. And you just talked about when you learned about the brain and exercise, it changed how you thought about exercise.
Yeah.
Your book did that for me in so many places because you
Yeah.
explained it in a way I haven't heard before. And I finally thought like, oh, I get that now. So we're going to come back to exercise too
Okay.
a little bit because I think that's so
Okay.
important. But I want to move over to the body because we
Yeah.
can't have this without talking about menopause. And
Of
there's
course.
and there is, as you say in your book, we all talk about hot flashes and we kind of laugh about it, whether it's funny or not. But there are so many other changes
Yeah.
that come with menopause, and a lot of those are taboo topics women still don't want to talk about, not only to each
Yeah.
other, but they don't talk to their doctors about it
Right.
when they could be getting help. So let's hear your take on some of those.
So the things that we don't tend to talk about, uh, expanding waistline. So when all of a sudden you look down and you say, swear to God, I did not eat more Tostitos last year. There is a reason why your waistline expands, and it has to do with your estrogen. A female body stands ready for childbearing all throughout its life, and you have extra fat cells on your hips and thighs that are there for a reason, so that if your belly starts expanding, they help you balance yourself out. Well, the body's really smart. And as soon as that estrogen level is down to the point that you are no longer in your childbearing years, those fat cells migrate to your front side, to your abdomen. And it's a natural body function. And if you do the research and you understand that, so you know what's coming and you understand why. Now, that still doesn't mean that you accept it, because when that happens, any fat above your belly button is the most dangerous fat. It can get inside all of your organs, the fat closest to your heart. However, something that I never knew anything about is how important your waist measurement is. I wonder if anybody watching now and listening has ever had a doctor take out a tape measure and measure your waistline. I never have. And I haven't, I don't ever find women that say, yeah, they
Yeah,
did that.
no, I never have either.
It's
So
crazy. Only a tailor, when they're, either bringing something in or taking something out. And so your waistline measurement is actually one of the most important numbers you should know, because it is one of the best predictors for obesity, type 2 diabetes, coronary artery disease, a whole host of things. A woman's really shouldn't be over 35, according to the experts, a man's over 40. Now, you measure your waist and it's 36, 37. What do you do? Well, if you lose 8 to 10 pounds, you can take off usually an inch around your waist. The only caveat I'm going to say is that if fat has gotten inside your organs, often women start to, get on an eating plan and they say, I'm down, but I don't see any difference here. The reason why is that the fat inside the organs goes first, and that's a really good thing. But it frustrates some women. After menopause, all of our lives, we've had insulin and estrogen, and they've done this wonderful little dance. Well, when the estrogen is gone, that's when everything goes haywire. And you can be much more susceptible to type 2 diabetes, and you've got to watch your blood sugar levels with your doctors. They say, I don't know, 90,000 Americans who are pre-diabetic, and 90% of them don't know it. And so we need to always be in front of that one. And the other thing is that, the waistline is a predictor, and we really have to be on top of that so that we don't get ourselves into a dangerous situation with bad blood sugar levels. It also becomes much more difficult to lose weight once all that estrogen is gone and it's just the insulin there. So if all of a sudden you say, I don't get it, I can't work out as hard as I used to, and I don't seem to lose the weight as easy, it's all about the loss of estrogen in the body. But, you know, that's why I wanted everyone to understand what it is that's happening. The better we know our bodies,
Right.
I think the more comfortable we will be. And there's so many little tweaks in our bodies. For instance, let's just talk about it. Leaky bladders. Okay. It's a natural happening. Why? It's gravity. It's those muscles down there that just get weaker and weaker and weaker. And this is a real problem for a lot of women. And, you know, I go through 6 or 8 different things in the book, all different things. And there are, you know, different medical remedies you can go through, but I like some of the really simple ones. Stay active. Now, what happens is that when women have this, they think, I'm going to stop drinking water, because if I stop drinking water, then I'll stop peeing. That's the worst thing you can do. It will only exacerbate the situation. The pee becomes more intense and acidic. You don't want to stop drinking water. You don't want to stop being active. And if you lose weight and you kind of lighten up a little, that is a huge help. Avoid high impact exercise. Now, I avoid high impact exercise because I had disc surgery after taking 9 Gs and a Thunderbird and F-18 with the Thunderbirds. I'm great at a cocktail party. But also it's eating the right foods. And, you know, we kind of learn over time what really exacerbates these problems. But you kind of have to listen to your body, maybe take a few notes, you know, and find that out, like avoid caffeine and alcohol. Those are definitely going to add to the problem. If you smoke, just quit smoking. I could give you 1,000 reasons to quit smoking. But some of these things are small life tweaks. And a lot of these small life tweaks can make an enormous difference. Want to like talk about one that nobody ever talks about? So as you age, just like the skin on our face, it starts to lose the collagen and it becomes thinner and thinner. Sometimes women will get dark circles under their eyes, and it's because the skin is thinner and they're seeing blood vessels, and your face actually shrinks a little as we age. So things get more pronounced. And that's also what starts to cause wrinkles. Well, the same thing happens to the inside of our vagina. All right. The skin gets thinner, gets less elastic. And so sexual intercourse can hurt. It can become really uncomfortable. And there are a number of things that you can do. And I talk about all of them in the book. And obviously you talk to your doctor about this, but there's something called the Mona Lisa touch, which kind of goes up into the vagina. And it's kind of like, there's something that they do to your face. I forget what it is. Micro something. It sounded a little bit rough to the face in my book. But anyway, they have the same thing that can be done inside the vagina, which increases collagen and it increases the thickness of that lining. But the reason why this is so important is to understand that there's not something wrong with you. It's something that is not that unusual for aging women. And when women tend not to want to talk about it with a partner, because these things are embarrassing, but they're also worrisome. But by not talking to a partner about it, not talking to a doctor about it, and then what happens, because there are all kinds of things that your doctor can prescribe and vaginal supplements. Then your husband just thinks, she's not into me anymore. I'm not sexy anymore. And it can really cause a bad breakdown between husband and wife because they feel they're being rejected. So, you know, it's important that we kind of conjure up the fortitude, our braveness, and say, I need to talk to you about something. And there are things that can be done about it. But all these kinds of things are, I mean, they can be so embarrassing that women don't ever talk about it with their doctors. And there's so many little things, as you know, because you've read the book, that there are so many little things we can do to remedy some of these things before we ever go to a doctor.
Exactly. And I'm so glad that you're bringing all of these issues out in the open. So, we have so been trying to encourage women to talk about
Yeah.
these conversations that are difficult to talk to your doctor. It's so important for all of us because help is there.
Yeah.
And in fact, we're going to do some kind of a menopause event later this year too, and continue that. So really, Joan, it's so important that people like you who have a huge platform and can reach so many people are giving this message to women so that we know we can talk about it.
And I
So
try to do it in a fun way. I mean, you know that I remember one day my husband walked through, I'm in my home office, and he walked through and he said, "What are you working on today?" When I was working on the book, I said, "Leaky bladders." He said, "Yeah, but you can't say leaky bladders, can you?" I said, "Are you kidding? The title of this chapter is Sometimes I Laugh So Hard, Tears Run Down My Leg." And he gives me that arched eyebrow. "Are you sure you should be talking about this?"
well, that was another one of the things I was going to say. The chapter titles in your book are so funny. I mean, you can just open up the book and read the titles and get a laugh. So there's one, and this goes to your wonderful candor, Joan. You have one called Sometimes I Laugh So Hard, Tears Run
Yeah.
Down My Leg. And in which you just talked about, in that chapter, though, you're actually brave enough to tell a story about the time you actually peed in your Spanx. And
Oh, yes. Okay.
I don't know
I'm betting
public.
I'm betting that you can probably all of you can relate to this. If you've ever bought a pair of Spanx, you know how hard they are to get on and off. I went out to this big gala affair, and I was in this black beaded dress that kind of shined. But they're heavy when they're beaded, they're a heavy dress. So I went to the ladies' room. And I think that our bladder is kind of like, remember that experiment with the Pavlov's dog, where they rang a bell and they gave the dog food. Then they rang the bell, they gave the dog food.
Right.
And after time, pretty soon, all they had to do was ring the bell and saliva came down the dog's face, So our bladder is kind of like that. Like, it knows when we drive in our garage. It knows when we unlock the front door and it says, "Oh, we're home. Okay, I bet you I can beat you to the bathroom." That's what our bladder is. They're in a race with us. And so this night I went in and my bladder knew I was in that stall. However, I'm like pulling up this heavily beaded dress, holding it above my boobs. And I'm trying to get this full thing down. And well, anyway, the Pavlovian response won. So now there I am with this wet, very expensive Spanx garment. And I'm carrying this little tiny purse that's just big enough, for my lipstick and maybe some blush or something. And I had to put this expensive garment into that little box, that they have in there. And now I just dropped my dress to the floor and walked out commando. And I couldn't even wipe the smile off my face because I couldn't help thinking, I mean, I know today girls do this all the time, young girls, but not from my era. And, people would be talking to me and I'd have this smirk on my face because I knew I was bare-assed. So my husband said, "You cannot tell that story." I said, "Oh, yes, I am." Because you know what? That's what breaks down the barrier.
Yes.
And lets you just have a conversation with people. And there's "Oh man, the same thing happened to her." I bet you there's a lot of Spanx stories.
I thank you for sharing that story. And I'm sure everyone on this call, if they were really honest, might have a very similar kind of story. One day we'll just sit around and share our Spanx stories with each other. So I do want to talk about the water thing.
Okay.
Hydration and some of the things, because really that kind of changed my perspective on hydrating.
I was a horrible water
with
drinker.
A little wine.
Yeah, that's a good diversion. I wasn't a good water drinker, and probably the thing that made me a good water drinker was being diagnosed with cancer and having to go through chemo and knowing that how important. They told me that drinking those, at that point they wanted me to drink 10 glasses of water a day. It keeps your veins, because you plump and all of that, and it washes the chemo out of you so that you're ready to go back. So I really had to get with the program. And a fitness trainer of mine went on Oriental trading and got these thin little plastic, different color bracelets. And she said, put these 10 on, and because you're never going to be honest with yourself, which is true. How much water have you had a day? 7 glasses. Well, it's probably 3. Okay. And every time I would actually finish a glass, I would move one to the other arm. And in the beginning, I was like, I'd find like 6 of them still over here, and it was 6:30 at night. Note to self, don't drink the rest right then between 6:30 and bedtime. You'll be up all night. But
someone just commented, said when she drinks a lot of water, she's up all night. So
that's just it. So, get 2 or 3 of them out. Promise yourself, and create a habit that in the morning. I know some women have told me that they don't allow themselves to have their coffee until they have, 2 glasses of water. It's really great if you really want to be kind to your insides, your thyroid and everything. Drink a glass of warm water with lemon, with a half a lemon squeezed into it every morning before you do anything else. I was also really surprised to hear from one expert that it's better to drink water sitting down. That if you stop and think about it, if you're standing up and you drink the water, it just splashes down in and goes right through. Whereas if you drink your water sitting down, it just it's just taken in a different way.
Yeah, that was another thing I had never heard either.
I'd
Joan.
never
I
heard
hearing that.
And
Yeah.
how about, it's even better to eat your water. Watermelon, celery, cantaloupe, any fruits or vegetables that have a high water content, the water molecules in those fruits and vegetables are a better water molecule than the molecule in just a glass of water. But however you do it, keep a little journal for a while, because we almost have to create the habit. We have to give ourselves some goals. By this time, I'm going to have had this much water. Otherwise, you remember at 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and then you try to make up for it, and we all know what happens then.
Right.
But getting enough water is incredibly important. Our body is like, I don't know, 80% water, and you can go for. It's been proven with people, in prison when they go on a fast, that a hunger strike, you can go days. Believe it or not, you can actually go a week or 2 without eating. I don't know how, but you can't go more than 72 hours without water.
Right.
And that really kind of, when you start thinking about it in those terms, you got to have that 8 glasses of water a day. You got to have that 7 to 9 hours of sleep at night. You've got to have some form of cardiovascular disease. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be like a fitness trainer, but you have to figure out something to do, whether it's walking the stairs, whether it's going outside, whether, you got to just figure it out. During this pandemic, a gazillion workouts came online. They're all over the place, and you can actually put a workout for a 70-year-old woman beginner. Boom, it pops up, and there's a million of them. So there's really no excuse. We just have to we have to honor and love our bodies enough to put in a little bit of time, because it is going to make our bodies run more efficiently. It's going to help us manage our stress. And by the way, enough water is also really important for your brain. So there's, the book is full of all the reasons why, and lots of different interesting ways how we can make that happen.
Well, Joan, your book is such a great resource for all of us, and really everyone. We've only really tapped the surface. So if you haven't already bought the book, you are going to want to do that as soon as we get off the Zoom call, because as you can hear, there's so much wonderful information. You're having real honest conversations. As I said, I learned so many things from this book. and it will help to motivate you as well. I mean, I'll just touch on a couple of the other things that I think were so key in the book. You talk about being the CEO of your health and how
Yeah.
important it is, the test we should get, how important
Yep.
it is to have your medical records, which
Yeah.
that was a wake up call for me. I don't have any of my medical records.
But every
And
time you go to a
yeah,
doctor, at the end of the appointment, they always say the same thing. Who would you like these medical records sent to? Me. You know, don't just say, oh, send it to my primary care physician. Say, and me, I want them sent to me. And you can get your medical records out of offices. Some of them will charge you,
yeah,
but it's really important to put it all together. And when you walk out from an annual appointment, go in we all carry our phones now, go to the following year, because, you know, insurance, you have to wait 1 full year usually for them to pay for it. And put a little note to yourself, because they won't always give you that appointment a year from now. Some places will, some won't. And if they won't, you know, 3 months before you're going to need it, put a little calendar note in your calendar that says, book an appointment with Dr. So-and-so. But it's up to us, and we really have to be the CEO of our own health management.
Yeah, and that's such important advice. That's
Yeah.
great advice. So I want to get to some of the comments in chat.
Oh,
But
okay.
before we do that, one of your almost last chapters, which I also love the title of, is I Want to Be Cremated. It's my last chance for a smoking hot body.
Yes.
And in that chapter, you suggest an exercise of writing
Yeah.
your own obituary and
And
eulogy. What do you want people to say about you? But at the end, you say what you would like your tombstone to read. So Joan, tell us what you want on your tombstone.
she's classy, sassy, and a bit badassy. And
I
by
want to
the way,
steal that. I want that on mine too.
and by the way, I also go through and I tell you how I want my funeral, which is I want my hairdresser. His name is Amir. I want him to do my hair and makeup. I want to be in my favorite little black dress. You know, my mom wrote out her entire what she wanted in her funeral. And I dressed her exactly the way she wanted to be dressed. And I made sure it was a fun funeral. I made sure her longtime hairdresser was there. I had her stand up and I said, my mom always said, my mom was like a real redhead, you die until you die. And and so it's not a morbid exercise to take this challenge of writing your own eulogy. And I take them through this wonderful exercise that I watched from backstage. I watched Stephen Covey, a wonderful author, inspirational author. And we were in a stadium with like, I don't know, 26,000 people. And he had everyone close their eyes. He said, we're going to go on a trip. Nobody opened their eyes. Go with me. You know where we are? We're at your funeral. Oh, look who's coming in the door. It's everybody from the office. And as they're coming by the coffin, what are they saying about you? What do you hope that they would be saying about you? What do you hope your eulogy would be saying? Not about, you know, that she worked as a blah, 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 but what kind of person? What kind of person? How do you want to be described as a person? Because whatever it is, you have from now until the end of time to work on becoming that person. And it is a real, I think, eye-opening challenge to take.
Well, I think that is terrific. And I just can't thank you enough, because the book it's inspiring, it's motivating, you're going to learn a lot, people. And I just can't thank you enough for writing about it and sharing your time with us tonight too, to tell us about it. So I'm going to, let me see, I'm going to open up chat. I don't know if you can see.
I can. And I can
okay.
see,
So
they answered my question. It's called microabrasion or microneedling. Thanks.
See, it's good. It takes a village to remember things, right?
And I have a dermatologist, and he told me about it because he thought I was going to say, "Ooh, good, do it to me." I'm like a real needle phobic. Like, I'm not even good with shots. I kind of got over it going through chemo, but I think he's probably wondering why I never called him back. I was like, I don't want a whole bunch of needles on my face. But in any event, microdermabrasion is different. That's like they have like a little vacuum cleaner and they vacuum off all the dead cells. And I've done that. That makes your makeup go on smooth, according to my makeup artist. Some people say I've done the same thing running in tights and shorts. I can so relate. Oh yeah. Anybody take yoga or a class where you get down on the ground and you do all of your sit-ups? I always, like, as soon as they say get on the mat, I run to the bathroom, go to the bathroom and say, okay, now I'm ready.
So do
Ooh,
we have a,
and also be the CEO of your mental health. Yes, that's called stress management. And that's just, it really is almost equally as important, because if you don't manage your stress, it has an effect on your immune system and on your longevity. If you are eating terrible stuff and your microbiome, is, you get like a leaky gut, what they call it.
right.
It affects your immune system. Like, a large number of your immune cells are in your gut, believe it or not. I had a hard time like wrapping my brain around that one. But and you can go get checked on this and find out, if you have a non-functioning pancreas. There are two sides of a pancreas. One of them is produces insulin, and then the other one produces I forget what it is, but you can get pancreatitis, and it all has to do with all the crap that we eat and not eating enough fiber. We've heard it a million times, shop the perimeter. When I was diagnosed with cancer, I got a nutritionist to help me. He said, you're going to eat no sugar, no wheat, and no dairy. And there was like silence on the phone for a few minutes. And then I said, what's left? He said, real food, fruits, vegetables, and high dense protein, chicken. And so, and I got to tell you, going on that eating plan, it's not a diet, but going on that eating plan during my chemo meant that I never had any of the awful, horrible side effects of chemo. And anyone who's gone through it will know what I'm talking about. And I didn't get them. And it was because of cutting those things out. And I've pretty well tried to cut sugar out of my diet ever since.
Was it when you were diagnosed with cancer, was that what got you more into the healthy living space, or were you already interested in that before then?
I was already into the dissemination of health information. My dad was a doctor. He was a cancer surgeon back at a time when there was no chemo and there was no radiation, there was only surgery. And I used to watch as people would come up to us, in stores, walking on the streets of our town, and they would always embrace my dad and say, thank you, doc, for saving my wife's life. Or, I used to hear that all the time. They'd bend down, get like eye to eye with me, and they'd say, do you know, young lady, how important your daddy is to our family? And I wanted to be a doctor. Like, who wouldn't want to be that? But I went to work in a hospital that my dad had helped to found and build right before going to college. And I found out that scalpels and needles, they were not going to be part of my life. But I think I always had this little niggling regret that I hadn't really carried on his legacy, because my dad was also a private pilot. And when I was 13 and when he was only 51, he crashed coming home from a cancer convention and was killed. Gosh. So I wanted even more so to like follow in his footsteps. So I always had a passion for disseminating health information. That was my mission, that was kind of at the core of Joan Lunden. But when I went through chemo and really had to learn about nutrition and my health and cell division, and if I ate too much fruit, it would encourage cell growth, all these things that you don't want when you're dealing with cancer. That really is what kind of just perked me up to the fact that I need to understand my body better. And so I'm a curious journalist. So I just started reading book after book after book. And when I would learn things, it would excite me. And I would say, oh my God, I can't wait to share this. The story about the migrating fat cells, things like that. You just can't wait to share with other people. So that diagnosis of cancer, not that anybody wants it, but it oddly dropped into my lap an incredible opportunity to carry on my dad's legacy. It was probably the most exciting and important story that I, ever took on. And by the way, when I'm gone, if I'm just remembered for what I did in the field of advocating and educating, advocating for cancer patients and educating cancer patients, I'd be good with that.
Well, Joan, I have to thank you. You are doing so much for all of us. You're making us all feel so much better about growing older and also knowing that we can take control of so
Yeah.
many of these things.
We can take
You're
it.
Yes, and you're such a wonderful motivator for all of us. And I just can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. It's just been an honor and a treat and a privilege. And just keep everything you're doing. You're bringing such really important, great information to all of us. So
Well, I
on
thank
behalf of
you.
all the tomatoes and everyone here tonight, I thank all of you for being here tonight, because I just love our group of tomatoes. And we thank you, Joan. And when you get off this Zoom call tonight, if you didn't already get Joan's book, get it. Why did I come into this room? So before you forget to do that, write it down right now.
Don't leave it, because you'll never remember.
Exactly. You'll forget.
And I had fun,
on the
a
way
lot
to
of
the
fun
computer.
writing.
Well, I thank you. Thank you for being here. Good night, everyone. Good night to all
Bye,
the
ladies.
tomatoes. Thank you, Joan. Stay well, stay healthy. Bye.
Bye.